Imagine this. One day, you wake up and find out that the world you thought you knew is completely different from what you imagined. This is not a dream or a nightmare, it's history. History is full of surprises, and one of the most shocking is how the Chinese, who had the technology and resources to explore the world, chose to stay home. Meanwhile, the Vikings, who lived in a harsh, cold land, became some of the most fearless explorers in history. This story is about why the Chinese turned inward, and how the Vikings became the wanderers of the seas. In the 15th century, China was a powerful and advanced civilization. They had massive fleets led by Admiral Zheng He, who explored the Indian Ocean and the coasts of Africa. These expeditions were incredible feats of navigation and engineering. Zheng He's ships were so large that they could carry thousands of people, including soldiers, sailors, and diplomats. They brought back exotic animals like giraffes and rhinoceroses, which were seen as signs of the emperor's divine favor. The Chinese people were amazed by these creatures, but the emperor and his court saw them as proof of China's greatness. However, this golden age of exploration did not last. The Chinese emperor Yongle was succeeded by more conservative leaders who believed that China was already perfect and did not need to look outside its borders. They saw the outside world as a threat rather than an opportunity. In 1433, an imperial edict banned all foreign maritime ventures. The punishment for breaking this law was severe, including beheading. This decision marked the end of China's organized seafaring adventures. The shipyards were dismantled, and the sailors were forced to abandon their ships. Within a few decades, China's once mighty fleet had disappeared, and the country turned inward. While the Chinese were closing their doors to the world, the Vikings were just beginning their journeys. The Vikings were a group of seafaring people from Scandinavia, which includes modern-day Denmark, Norway, and Sweden. They lived in a harsh, cold land with limited resources. The Viking Age, which lasted from the late 8th century to the 11th century, was a time of great exploration and conquest. The Vikings were known for their longships, which were fast and maneuverable, allowing them to travel far and wide. The Vikings did not set out to explore the world out of curiosity. They were driven by necessity. Their homeland was rocky and unsuitable for farming, so they needed to find new sources of food and wealth. They began by raiding coastal towns and monasteries in the British Isles and Europe. These raids were brutal and swift, leaving a trail of destruction. But as time went on, the Vikings evolved from raiders to traders and settlers. They established colonies in places like Iceland, Greenland, and even North America, which they called Vinland. The Vikings were not just warriors. They were also skilled navigators. They used a combination of astronomy, knowledge of the stars, and the sun to navigate the open seas. They also had a deep understanding of the winds and currents, which allowed them to travel long distances. The Vikings' longships were designed to be both seaworthy and capable of navigating rivers and coastal waters. This versatility made them ideal for exploration and trade. One of the most remarkable Viking expeditions was led by Leif Erikson, who is believed to have reached North America around the year 1000, nearly 500 years before Christopher Columbus. Eriksson's journey was not a one-time event. The Vikings established a settlement in present-day Newfoundland, Canada, which they called Vinland. This settlement did not last long, but it proves that the Vikings were capable of long-distance travel and exploration. The contrast between the Chinese and the Vikings is striking. The Chinese had the technology and resources to explore the world, but they chose not to. The Vikings, on the other hand, had limited resources and a harsh environment, but they became some of the greatest explorers in history. Why did this happen? One reason is cultural. The Chinese believed that they were the center of the world and that everything of value was already within their borders. They saw the outside world as a threat to their way of life. The Vikings, on the other hand, saw the world as a place of opportunity. They were willing to take risks and explore unknown lands in search of wealth and resources. Another reason is political. The Chinese emperors were more interested in maintaining their power and control over their subjects. They saw foreign trade and exploration as a potential threat to their authority. The Vikings, on the other hand, were not ruled by a centralized government. They were independent and free to pursue their own interests. This gave them the freedom to explore and trade without the constraints of a rigid political system. The Chinese and the Vikings also had different economic systems. The Chinese economy was based on agriculture and trade within their own borders. They did not see the need to look outside for resources. The Vikings, on the other hand, had a more diverse economy that included farming, fishing, and trade. They were driven by the need to find new sources of food and wealth, which led them to explore and settle new lands. In the end, the Chinese decision to turn inward and the Viking decision to explore the world had far-reaching consequences. The Chinese missed the opportunity to become a global power and were eventually overtaken by European explorers. The Vikings, on the other hand, left a lasting legacy of exploration and discovery. Their voyages opened up new trade routes and established connections between different parts of the world. The story of the Chinese and the Vikings is a reminder that history is full of surprises. It shows that the choices we make as a society can have a profound impact on our future. The Chinese chose to stay home and maintain their way of life, while the Vikings chose to explore and embrace the unknown. Both choices had their consequences, and both stories are part of the rich tapestry of human history. So, the next time you wake up and wonder what the day will bring, remember that the world is full of surprises. The choices we make can change the course of history, just as they did for the Chinese and the Vikings. Whether we choose to stay home or explore the unknown, our decisions shape the world we live in.